That is the sound of an F-35 firing its cannon. 55 rounds per second from a 4-barrel Gatling, bolted underneath the belly. Not hidden inside the airframe, not tucked behind a stealth panel, bolted, outside, in the open air, wrapped in a carbon fiber pod the size of a bathtub. The F-22 Raptor hides its gun inside the wing root. A trapdoor opens, 6 barrels fire at 110 rounds per second, and the door seals shut. Stealth, never broken. 480 rounds. The F-35A does the same thing, buries the same cannon behind a flush panel in the fuselage. 180 rounds. Still invisible to radar. But the F-35B, the Marines jet, and the F-35C, the Navy's carrier jet, carry that exact same cannon hanging outside the aircraft. Why would you take a $100 million stealth fighter and bolt a gun to the outside? If you're new here, subscribe to Navy Decoded, because by the end of this breakdown, you'll understand why that gun pod might be the smartest design flaw in modern aviation. In 1965, the F-4 Phantom II went to war over North Vietnam without a gun. The engineers who designed it believed missiles had made cannons obsolete. The radar-guided Sparrow and the heat-seeking Sidewinder would handle everything from beyond visual range before the enemy even knew you were there. Physics disagreed. The early AIM-9B Sidewinder had a maximum effective range of roughly 3 nautical miles and could only lock onto a target's exhaust from directly behind. Its uncooled infrared seeker tracked at just 11 degrees per second, could not be launched above 2 Gs, and went blind against the sun or a cloud bank. Inside approximately 3,000 feet, the seeker couldn't track at all. Anything closer than that was inside the missile's dead zone. The AIM-7D Sparrow was worse in close. Its minimum engagement range sat between 3,000 and 5,000 feet, and every shot required the pilot to keep the radar locked on target for the entire flight time of the missile, flying straight and level while MiG-17s and MiG-21s closed in. The probability of kill for early Sparrow models in Vietnam was less than 10%. And the rules of engagement over Hanoi forced American pilots to visually identify every aircraft before firing, negating whatever long-range advantage the Sparrow theoretically offered. By the time they confirmed the target was hostile, they were already too close for missiles to save them. The result? American pilots found themselves in knife fights with no knife. The Phantom, the most powerful fighter in the U.S. inventory, was forced into dogfights it was never designed to win. Kill ratios collapsed. The Air Force bolted a clumsy external gun pod onto the F-4 and eventually redesigned the entire airframe to fit the M61 Vulcan internally in the F-4E. That lesson burned itself into every fighter requirement document written since. The number of air-to-air kills scored by gun in combat since the Falklands War rounds to approximately 0. But the gun still appears in every operational requirements document, because its presence denies the enemy the one maneuver that renders missiles useless, closing into the dead zone. The gun exists not to score kills, it exists so the adversary never dares to try. But the requirement document went further. The gun was not just a deterrent in the sky, it was also the last resort weapon on the ground. The Joint Strike Fighter ORD demanded the F-35 carry a gun capable of achieving a probability of kill of 0.35 against lightly armored vehicles at 9,000 feet slant range, with a dispersion under 3.1 milliradians. A Cold War-era standard, still mandatory for a 21st century fighter. The F-35A solved it by burying the GOW-22A inside the fuselage. But the F-35B and C could not. Inside the B, the lift fan and the 3-bearing swivel module eat every cubic inch above the left intake. Inside the C, 19,200 pounds of internal fuel and a reinforced landing gear for carrier arrestment leave no room. Every cubic inch was already spoken for. The only option left? Hang the gun outside. To understand why this matters, we need to open the pod. The cannon inside is the GOW-22A, built by General Dynamics. It is a direct descendant of the GOW-12U, the 5-barrel rotary gun that flew on the AV-8B Harrier and the AC-130U Spooky gunship. The engineers stripped one barrel, dropped the weight, and optimized the weapon for a stealth fighter that was never supposed to carry it externally. 4 barrels. 25mm, larger than the 20mm Vulcan on the F-22 and F-16, smaller than the 30mm Avenger on the A-10. The rate of fire is 3,300 rounds per minute, 55 rounds leaving the muzzle every second at 3,560 feet per second. Each round crosses 3 times the speed of sound before the target hears the first one arrive. The recoil force is 3,700 pounds, roughly 16,500 newtons, the equivalent thrust of a small jet engine pushing backward into the airframe every time the trigger is held. The ammunition is the PGU-32 USA PHEIT, semi-armor piercing, high-explosive incendiary tracer. It punches through light armor, detonates inside, and burns. 220 rounds coil around the gun's axis in a helical feed system, a spiral of ammunition wrapped tight like a clock spring. Now, the shell that carries it. 2 variants exist. The GPU-9A rides underneath the F-35B. The GPU-8A fits the F-35C. They are not interchangeable. The outer mold line, the aerodynamic fairing that wraps around the gun, is shaped differently for each variant to match the belly contour of its host. Terma, a Danish defense company, builds the shell from monolithic carbon fiber composite. It hangs from the centerline station, the hardpoint directly below the aircraft's spine, sitting on the main longitudinal structural beam. This is the most stable mount point on the airframe. And this is where the engineering gets interesting. The entire 3,700 pounds of recoil is isolated from the airframe. The force transmits through the hardpoint into the structural beam below, not into the composite skin, not into the stealth coatings, not into the internal structure. The gun kicks. The pod absorbs it. The airframe barely notices. That mechanical stability is the foundation, but what sits on top of it is what makes the weapon lethal. The pilot does not aim with eyes. The F-35's HMDS, a helmet-mounted display system that costs approximately $400,000 per unit, projects targeting data directly onto the visor. The AESA radar computes the firing solution. A burst controller limits each trigger pull to 30 to 50 rounds. At 40 rounds per burst, 220 rounds gives the pilot roughly 5 precise trigger pulls before the magazine is empty. Every burst is calculated. Every round is aimed by radar. 5 chances. Make them count. 5 trigger pulls, 220 rounds, a carbon fiber pod mounted beneath a $100 million jet. Picture this. The USS Tripoli, hull number LHA-7, an American-class amphibious assault ship, is holding station in the Strait of Hormuz with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit embarked. There is no catapult on this ship, no arresting cables, no E-2D Hawkeye circling overhead for early warning, no EA-18G Growler for electronic attack, no A-10 Warthog. It needs thousands of feet of concrete runway, and there is nothing but ocean here. No AC-130 gunship, just a flat deck, 2,200 Marines, and 20 F-35Bs. Marines are ashore. They need fire support. Close, low, now. The only aircraft on that ship capable of mounting a gun and flying down to strafe is the F-35B, with a GPU-9A slung underneath. It rolls to the end of the flat deck, lifts off in a few hundred feet, and within minutes it is overhead. 25mm rounds guided by radar, delivered through clouds the pilot never needs to see through. That is not a hypothetical. That is the scenario the Marine Corps has been building toward for a decade. In April 2022, the Tripoli demonstrated what the Marine Corps calls the Lightning Carrier concept. 20 F-35Bs packed onto a single amphibious assault ship, turning a flat deck into a stealth carrier. No other platform in the U.S. inventory combines short takeoff and vertical landing from a ship, with a gun, with sensor fusion, with precision-guided munitions, in the same sortie. The A-10 carries 1,174 rounds of 30mm ammunition and was purpose-built for close air support. It remains the most feared strafing platform in permissive airspace. But the A-10 cannot fly from a ship. It cannot survive contested airspace defended by modern surface-to-air missiles. And it relies on the pilot's eyes to find the target. The AV-8B Harrier, the jet the F-35B replaced, could fly from ships and land vertically. But its sensors belong to the Cold War. No distributed aperture system, no sensor fusion. The pilot looked through a traditional heads-up display and searched for targets with human eyes, through weather, through smoke, through darkness. The F-35B changes the equation. The ANAAQ-37 distributed aperture system, 6 infrared cameras mounted around the airframe, gives the pilot spherical vision, 360 degrees, through clouds, through darkness, through the floor of the aircraft. The AESA radar computes the gun firing solution before the pilot's finger reaches the trigger. 25mm rounds at 5 milliradians accuracy, each burst placed by mathematics, not instinct. The gun is not a day 1 weapon, it is a day 2 weapon, after the air defenses fall and Marines need fire that arrives in seconds, not minutes. The day when a 250-pound bomb is too much, and a burst of 25mm is just enough. In the winter of 2019 and 2020, F-35Bs deployed to Afghanistan proved this in combat. While A-10s were grounded by cloud cover and poor visibility over Herat, the F-35Bs, described by Afghan commanders as cool birds, flew above the weather, looked through it with DAS, and delivered precision strikes that shifted the tactical situation on the ground. The A-10 carries 1,174 rounds. The F-35B carries 220. But the question is not how many rounds you carry. The question is how many rounds hit. Now we reach the part that no one expects. Mounting the gun externally costs the F-35 something. The pod adds drag. It disrupts the aircraft's carefully sculpted cross-section, violating the area rule that governs transonic aerodynamics. The penalty is measurable. The F-35A, with its internal gun, adds roughly 8 seconds to its transonic acceleration, the time to push from Mach 0.8 to Mach 1.2. The F-35B, with the GPU-9A, adds 16. The F-35C, the heaviest variant with the largest wings and the most fuel, adds over 40 seconds, more than 5 times the penalty of the A variant. That is the tax you pay for hanging a bathtub under a stealth fighter. But here is the paradox. The gun mounted outside is more accurate than the gun mounted inside. The F-35A's internal gun 22A sits recessed into the left side of the fuselage behind a flush door. During production, the mounting brackets on early lots were found to be misaligned. The gun sat slightly off-axis. The F-22 handles this differently. Its wing root absorbs the recoil because the Raptor's airframe was designed around the gun from the start. The F-35A was not. When the weapon fires, 3,700 pounds of recoil transmits directly into the composite skin of the chine longeron, the structural ridge that defines the aircraft's stealth shaping. The result? Cracking. Structural cracking in the stealth skin itself. The Pentagon's Director of Operational Test and Evaluation flagged the accuracy as failing to meet requirements. Aircraft from Lot 9 onward carried a restriction. The internal gun was authorized for combat use only. No training, no peacetime firing. As of 2024, the Pentagon's testing office still flagged the gun's accuracy as failing to meet original requirements, though the program office has since declared the weapon operationally effective. The restriction on training use remained. The external pod has none of these problems. The gun sits on its own isolated mount. The recoil passes through the centerline hardpoint into the main beam, a structural member designed to carry bombs weighing thousands of pounds. 5 milliradians dispersion, no cracking, no restriction. The gun that was forced outside turned out to be more stable, more accurate, and less destructive to the aircraft than the one carefully engineered inside. Think of it this way. Mounting a gun inside a fighter is like firing a rifle while riding a bus. Every vibration in the frame travels straight into the barrel. The external pod is a tripod set on its own foundation, isolated, independent, precise. And that tripod can hold more than a gun. Terma, the Danish company that builds the carbon fiber shell, developed a variant called the multi-mission pod. The MMP uses the exact same outer mold line as the gun pod, same shape, same aerodynamic profile. Every wind tunnel test, every radar cross-section certification, every flight envelope clearance that the gun pod already passed, the MMP inherits for free. Hundreds of millions of dollars in testing, already paid for. But inside, the gun and the helical feed are removed. In their place, Terma has designed the pod to accept an electronic warfare jammer, giving the F-35 a dedicated jamming capability comparable to a fraction of what the EA-18G Growler provides, or an ISR sensor package for signals intelligence, or a directional data link to command a formation of CCA drones, unmanned wingmen like the XQ-58 Valkyrie, from a hardened, forward-deployed node, or a directed energy system, a generator and a laser designed to burn incoming missiles out of the sky. Same shell, same drag profile, Same certification, different brain inside. And this is the part the viewer at home needs to sit with. In every high-intensity operation from the Houthi strikes in 2024 through Operation Epic Fury against Iran in 2026, the F-35 flew clean. No gun pod, stealth configuration, precision-guided munitions only. The strafing was done by F/A-18 Super Hornets with their internal Vulcan, and by A-10s operating from land bases. The gun pod exists, it works, it is accurate. And in every Day 1 operation against defended airspace, the F-35 leaves it on the rack. Because on Day 1, that centerline station is worth more without a gun in it. Pull back from the gun. For a moment. The weapon is not the story, the space around it is. The F-35A carries its gun inside the airframe. It was the elegant solution. Flush panels, unbroken stealth, the cannon hidden behind a door that opens only when the trigger is pulled. But that elegance came with consequences. Misaligned mounting brackets, recoil cracking the stealth skin, a gun restricted to combat-only firing because every training burst risks structural damage. That volume inside the F-35A will be a 4-barrel cannon for the next 40 years, whether the mission needs a cannon or not. The F-35B and C carry nothing inside. The lift fan ate the space, the fuel tanks ate the space, the carrier landing gear ate the space. So they hung the gun outside, and in doing so, they created something the A variant will never have, a slot. That slot held a gun accurate to 5 milliradians when the internal mount could not. It gave Marines on the Tripoli the only strafing platform that flies from an amphibious ship. And in Epic Fury, when the mission demanded stealth over firepower, the slot stayed empty. The jet flew clean, and that emptiness was worth more than any weapon. The internal gun is a commitment. The external slot is a question, asked fresh before every sortie. What does this mission need? A gun? Mount it. A jammer? Swap it. A drone relay? Install it. The outer mold line never changes. The certification never expires. Only the answer changes. The engineers who ran out of room did not intend to create a modular weapons architecture. They intended to solve a problem. But the constraint forced a geometry that turned out to be more valuable than the weapon it was designed to carry. The defect became the platform. The compromise became the most adaptable piece of real estate on any fighter jet flying today. The F-35 leaves you with a question that does not belong to engineers alone. When you build something meant to last 50 years, do you lock in the best answer you have today? Or do you leave a slot open, accept the cost, and let the future decide? The F-35B and C were forced to carry their gun outside because physics left no room inside. Every engineer involved understood this was a compromise, a concession to volume, to the lift fan, to the fuel tanks, to the carrier landing gear. But compromises have a way of outliving the problems they were designed to solve. The F-35A chose the first path. The F-35B and C were forced into the second. The F-35A chose. The F-35B and C were forced. The question worth sitting with: which one ended up with more room to grow?
The world's energy heart has stopped beating. On March 4th, 2026, the Strait of Hormuz was officially closed, sending shockwaves through the global economy. Brent crude has surged past $120 per barrel. Qatar Energy has declared force majeure. The era of cheap energy is over, replaced by a strategic siege. The crisis follows the February 28th coordinated strikes of Operation Epic Fury. The United States and Israel attempted to neutralize Iranian capabilities, but the response was a total naval blockade. Tehran has shifted to a tactical naval strategy of extreme asymmetry. Fast boats, swarms of drones, and hidden missile batteries have turned the strait into a lethal gauntlet. On Monday, May 4th, 2026, the United States formally launched Project Freedom. It is a high-stakes military-backed operation to guide stranded commercial vessels out of the trap. You are watching Navy Moments. Today, we analyze the technology and the strategic panic behind the battle to break the $200 oil siege. The geography of the Strait of Hormuz makes it a natural choke point. Only 21 miles wide, it handles 15 million barrels of crude oil exports every single day. Iran's de facto control of this bottleneck has transformed international shipping into a hostage situation. Neutral vessels are now pawns in a nuclear-tier diplomatic game. Tehran's strategy focuses on agility. Their naval forces avoid direct confrontation with carrier groups, opting instead for swarm attacks that overwhelm traditional defenses. The new United States Department of War has shifted its posture. Under the current administration, the focus has moved to burden sharing and decisive homeland-first maritime security. The Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is now being tested in the Middle East. Strategic overstretch is no longer an option. The Allies must now take the lead. China's stake in the strait is immense. As the world's largest oil importer, Beijing is caught between its alliance with Tehran and the reality of a collapsing industrial base. To evade scrutiny, nearly 700 ships have cycled through multiple flags of convenience over the last 12 months. The legal maritime order is in chaos. Falsely flagged vessels have doubled since late 2025. The Shadow Fleet is now the primary method for transporting sanctioned energy across contested waters. GPS jamming has reached unprecedented levels near the strait. Navigation is no longer a matter of satellites. It is a return to inertial systems and visual piloting. Ship-to-ship transfers are surging in the anchorages off Togo, Egypt, and Malaysia. The global oil supply is moving through a clandestine network of aging tankers. In the Persian Gulf, investors are watching every movement. Shipping costs and insurance premiums have created an economic ripple effect felt at every gas station on Earth. The stalemate in the Iran war is forcing a radical evolution in naval warfare. Traditional missile defense is no longer sustainable against $20,000 drone swarms. Enter the age of directed energy weapons. High-energy lasers and high-power microwaves are now the primary shield for the Project Freedom convoys. War is now moving at the speed of light. Directed energy systems offer virtually unlimited magazines, limited only by the ship's stable power source. The cost per shot breakthrough has changed the math of naval defense. Firing a laser costs pennies compared to a multi-million-dollar interceptor missile. Modern high-energy lasers can melt the guidance systems of a Shahed series drone in milliseconds. This is the inflection point in the war against cheap swarms. High-power microwave weapons provide a wide-area defense, effectively frying the electronics of multiple incoming fast boats simultaneously. These systems are now being integrated into a system of systems approach, wedded to NATO standards for optimal interoperability between allied vessels. Task Force 66 is leading the integration of these uncrewed systems. The goal is to create a defensive bubble that drones simply cannot penetrate. Experiments in 2026 focus on uncrewed surface vessels equipped with modular laser payloads. These act as expendable pickets for the main convoy. A new family of related warships, displacing between 3,000 and 8,000 tons, is being fast-tracked to replace aging littoral combat ships. These modular platforms are designed for the dangerous, difficult, and decisive task of strait deblocking. They are the expendable vanguard of Project Freedom. Artificial intelligence now classifies fast boat swarms in real time. It distinguishes between commercial traffic and hostile militia boats within fractions of a second. Seabed defense has also become critical. The protection of underwater pipelines and sensors is now a primary mission for autonomous underwater vehicles. The mine countermeasures portfolio has shifted entirely to autonomous uncrewed systems. Human divers are being replaced by robots in the lethal waters of the Gulf. Project Freedom is not just a convoy operation. It is a test of naval survival. If the lasers fail, the global economy collapses under the weight of expensive oil. Logistics hubs in Lome and Lingi are functioning as the lungs of the global energy market, breathing life into a strangled supply chain. Reflagging scrutiny has intensified. Naval intelligence is now hunting falsely flagged ships that provide logistical support to the Iranian blockade. Economic stabilization remains uneven across the globe. Some regions are recovering, while those dependent on Hormuz oil are descending into industrial recession. The Department of War is laser-focused on restoring peace through strength. Deterrence is being rebuilt through a maritime industrial base that is finally modernizing. The health and training of sailors in 2026 are paramount. They are operating technology that was considered science fiction only 5 years ago. Resource-sustainable naval posture means every dollar is spent on a fleet ready to defeat asymmetrical threats at range. The Strait of Hormuz is technically open, but operationally constrained. It is a de facto Iranian bottleneck that Project Freedom must now break. Sovereignty in 2026 is defined by the ability to protect trade. Without freedom of navigation, the global order is nothing but a memory. Simulation. Convoy Alpha enters the strait. A tactical acoustic array detects 40 non-biological contacts moving at high speed from the Iranian coast. The swarm is identified as a mix of Shahed-type drones and explosive-laden fast boats. The engagement zone is now live. Project Freedom escorts activate their high-energy lasers. In a silent flash of light, the leading drones are neutralized as their optical sensors melt. The high-power microwave arrays are switched to maximum intensity. A wall of invisible energy saturates the electronics of the approaching fast boats. One by one, the hostile engines fail. The sea is littered with drifting dead vessels that never reach their targets. Uncrewed surface vessels move in to deliver precision kinetic strikes on the remaining missile batteries hidden in the coastal cliffs. The convoy moves through the bottleneck. The demasking of Iranian positions allows for a coordinated counterstrike from the air wings of the Gerald Ford. Freedom of navigation is being re-established through the sheer application of speed-of-light technology and tactical resolve. The breakout is successful, but the cost is high. The strategic risk of escalation remains the primary concern for the Department of War. As oil prices begin a slow descent from the peak, the world realizes that maritime security can never be taken for granted again. The Strait of Hormuz remains the most dangerous 21 miles on Earth. Project Freedom is a temporary fix for a permanent geopolitical fracture. The rebuilding of the global maritime industrial base must continue. Modernization is the only insurance against the next energy siege. Every sailor, every drone, and every laser is a part of the iron wall protecting the global flow of life. The transition to uncrewed systems is no longer a luxury. It is a decisive requirement for the survival of the modern warfighter. Navy Moments will continue to track the tactical evolution of the Hormuz conflict as it enters its most critical phase. The balance of power has shifted to those who master directed energy. The magazine is now as deep as the reactor's output. As we look toward the rest of 2026, the Pacific remains a long-term challenge, but the Gulf is the immediate fire. Join the discussion in the comments. Is the age of the aircraft carrier being saved by the age of the laser? Subscribe for more